Welcome to episode 5 of Football Club Chairman Hard Truth by Darragh McAnthony, my podcast. In this upcoming episode, I'm going to give my usual opinion on what's going on with the coronavirus updates as lockdowns are about to be lifted, as other countries go into deeper lockdowns. I'm going to talk about my week and the events in my week, which have been interesting to do with identity theft, believe it or not. I'm going to talk about the PFA's response to wage deferrals and the ongoing battle. I'm going to talk about the suggestions I put forward to the EFL. After episode 4 last week, where I listed a lot of those details, I followed up with a letter to the chairman of the Football League, Rick Perry. I'm going to talk, I've got the gaffer who's done an interview. It's a good 16 to 18 minute interview. So I'm going to hopefully load that up in this episode and hear his thoughts on what's going on in the world. And I'm going to finish up then with stories about my family, and maybe I might throw in the odd story from football. People have asked me to do that as well. So again, I'd like you to enjoy the episode. Anybody who's got any ideas that they want me to discuss or people they want me to interview in upcoming episodes, please email me at realdarragh@gmail.com. It's really been a blast so far. I've enjoyed doing these episodes. They've been very popular. Episode 4 was the most popular yet. It hit top 5 in all the main charts in Spotify and in Apple iTunes. And I even entered some charts in Malaysia, believe it or not. So very interesting. So hopefully you enjoy this episode as we dig into the future as we know it. Which is changing and evolving every day as we stay glued to the news screens and glued to social media accounts where everyone's an expert and a scientist nowadays. And hopefully football, more and more good news is going to come out and we can resume playing quite soon. So thank you. Enjoy. Welcome back. So coronavirus. Boy, oh boy, I cannot wait to do a podcast where I don't even have to mention that horrific word. The virus, the plague, whatever you want to call it. But I guess we're all gripped by this. This is affecting everybody's life. Let's look for what it is. Is it a good news week or a bad news week? Over here in America, it's all pretty much good news. Now, there's never good news when people are dying. And every day there's thousands of people dying from this virus around the world. But you have to look for good news in one way or another. And over here in the States, they seem to have hit the peak. We seem to be coming down the slope. There are areas out here not as affected as others. New York's horrific. But the beautiful thing here right now is Florida is in great shape. I think there's been less than 1,000 deaths. There's 24,000 people infected. California, which has 40, 50 million people living in it, again, has got it under control. So as bad as it's been in New York and New Jersey, the rest of America is in pretty good shape. The president did his conference last night about opening up America again. We're doing it in 3 phases. At times like this, you want hope. You watch these things. I know people want to belittle our presidents. They want to use politics, whether you're left, whether you're right, have a go at them. But you know what? I enjoy when the good news comes out of them because that's what we want. We want hope. I hate people out there who are saying, well, you need to lock up. You need to shut down for 18 months. We need to wait till, there's a vaccine. That's just not realistic. If you look at another 6 million people out of work this week in the US, that's 22 million people without jobs. I said to my missus the other night, we're very fortunate to be in a position with 3 kids up in bed that regardless of what's going on, we can continue to put food in the fridge. We can continue to pay our bills. Can you imagine us sitting here through all of this, living week to week, paycheck to paycheck, worried right now about how we feed our kids over the next couple of weeks, how we put our kids back in school? There are millions of people in that position. And I guess the argument comes down to you've got coronavirus, you've got poverty. Which one will win that battle? Because the global depression that's coming economically, if these lockdowns continue, if the world's going to lock themselves up for extended periods, you've no idea. More and more people, thousands, will die from poverty. That's been proven over the course of history and time. So I know there are people in that argument that you can't talk about business and life and sports when there are people losing their lives. But I'm in the other camp that you have to look at both. You have to do things responsibly. I employ hundreds of people. It's my responsibility to ensure they have jobs. It's my responsibility to ensure we get back to work in a safe manner. So when I see the president lay out his lines and his plans to open up in 3 different phases, it warmed my heart last night. And I think phase 1 was, and Florida should be in phase 1 within the next 10, 11 days. I would hope to see us reopen. We're going to look after the most vulnerable. Unfortunately, the most vulnerable people with underlying conditions, they're not going to be able to go about normal life for now. We're going to have to be respectful of them. We're going to have to look after them. We're going to have to wear masks. We're going to have to wear gloves. We're going to have to do things in a different way for the foreseeable future. That's okay with me. If that means we can go back to work and we start getting back to a semi-normal life before we get back to a full-on normal life, that's cool. At least now we know the steps. We know now from the government authorities that we've got 3 different phases we've got to get through as a society, wherever you live, whatever state you live. That for me, I want to see. I'm a planner. I like to see plans put in motion. The UK, I believe, were put in lockdown for an extra 3 weeks yesterday. And, it's horrible for everyone who lives in the UK. I know people are so frustrated. I know they're behind everyone else. I know their death rates are going up every day. Their infection rates are going up. But when you look at other areas of the world, good news should be on the way. The UK should get it under control. I have no idea why mortality rates are so high in some countries. The UK is like 10 to 13%. The US is only 5%. Germany's got one of the lowest mortality rates. All that stuff, I'd love to see more data on. I want to know why it's different here than it's different elsewhere, because the virus seems to affect everyone the same. So there's serious pressure on our healthcare systems. And that's something, obviously, as we prepare to go back to some sort of societal life and get out our doors in the weeks and months to come, we obviously have to support all our health services as best we can. The therapies have to be stepped up, all the work that needs to be put in so we can defeat this thing. Because all you see is, what about the second wave? What about the third wave? I guess it comes down to two parties at the moment, and which party or which camp you're in. Are you in the camp where you have, where you basically fear to live, or you live in hope? Because there are people right now, I know personally, who are really intelligent people who are pretty healthy, who are actually sitting at home in fear. And even when these restrictions are lifted, they're probably still not going to go out for a while because they're so worried about dying from coronavirus. There are other people in another camp like myself, my wife, who are like, we'll go about our life. If we have to be extra careful, we have to wear masks, we have to wear gloves. We understand there's a risk of infection. We understand there's a risk of mortality. And God bless those people who've lost people. But we also understand that there's a risk in everything you do in life. And you can't live in fear. And coronavirus shouldn't have us living in fear either. What it should have us is respecting the rules put in place, obviously, by the various governments in the different countries around the world. So I'm of mind that I love seeing what I saw last night from the president. I like the plan America has to reopen. I think it's going to work. Yes, there's going to be waves, there's going to be blow-ups in certain places, but I think we're going to get this in a much better way. The UK, I hope, follows. And that's the world we live in right now. Every day, you're reading social media feeds, you're reading the various scientists, you're watching, I've got the news on in the background right now. You always want to see some good news. But I'm definitely not going to live in fear. I'm definitely not in that camp that says you have to lock up and not go back to work for the next 18 months, not play sports for the next 18 months, not put our children back in school for the next 18 months. When this is all said and done, we need to see the data. Because for me, I'm a data freak. We need to know what is the real percentage chance of somebody in my age group or somebody under the age of 30 dying from coronavirus in comparison to something else. There's so much mixed data out there. We really need to see the truth and the hard facts. And I guess that's what's going to determine where we all go as a society. The frustrating thing for lots of people is, and this is going to happen in the weeks to come, this week in Michigan in America, because the governor there went to extra measures and wouldn't allow people out of their house at a certain time. People weren't even allowed in their lake in the backyard and go out on their boat. They all went out and picketed and protested. There was thousands of them went downtown in their cars. And to be fair, who can blame them? They've been cooped up for weeks. Now they're being told even harder and tougher restrictions. Now all the fundamental beliefs they have in the system, their constitutional rights, they feel are being violated. So that is when you go too far as a world leader. And I would imagine right now there's so many people who are cooped up that are ready to explode. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about the bills. They're worried about their families. They can't go outside. All right. They don't know when it's going to end. Some of their leaders aren't as hopeful as possibly what we're watching from our president over here. So all they get is bad news every single day. If some countries continue lockdowns late into May, I would guesstimate there's going to be serious anarchy. What you saw in Michigan is going to blow up everywhere. And it's already starting to blow up in some states around America. So the coming weeks is going to be interesting from that point of view. But one thing's for sure, I think if we look at it worldwide, we are starting to defeat this virus. We are starting to learn from it. You see news every day on trials, on vaccines, on better therapies. I think they're going to get the mortality rate under control. I would suspect by June, July, you're going to see this thing getting its ass kicked. And yes, there's going to be second waves. But as we're doing over here, there are going to be hotspots that you jump on and control it. So we can't live in fear. We have to live in hope. That's the way I live my life. I've always lived my life that way. And I'm certainly not going to, when the restrictions are lifted here in 2 weeks' time, hide in my office for the foreseeable future. Yes, I'm asthmatic. Yes, I have an underlying condition. Yes, there is possibly a risk. But I'm 44. I have a life to live. All right. And I'm going to go out and live my life as best I can. And that's the way I've got to look at things. And that's the only way I've got to look at things. And to give you an example this week's been really interesting for me. I've been out of the house for nearly 28 days since I got back from Dubai. I've basically been in quarantine. And nothing to do with coronavirus or feeling like I have it. I just felt it was the right thing to do. My wife's obviously gone out to do shopping when she can. She's gone out with her gloves, her mask. But this week, the bank needed me to come in and sign documents. Now, when I say come in and sign, our banks over here are a bit like a McDonald's. You've got a drive-through area where you drive up. There's a big glass window. They have a tray. They put documents in the tray. You take them, you sign them, you put them back in. And it's all to do with my identity being stolen this week. I was a victim of identity theft. But there I was yesterday, finally out of the house. I got in my car. The one day I went out of the house, it was raining, so I couldn't even put the roof down. I've got my mask on. I've got my gloves on. I pull up to the bank. As I'm about to pull up to the booth in the window, I look in my mirror inside the car, and I swear to God, I look like Billy the Kid pulling up to rob a bank. And for a moment, there was that feeling of, I hope they don't pull a gun on me, because I do look like somebody who's about to hold up the bank with my mask, my gloves. But that's the new world. That's the way it is. And as I pull up, in fairness, the bank manager comes to the window, and he's wearing a mask, he's wearing gloves, gives me the wave, everything good, gives me the documents. So that's kind of, I guess, the life we're about to live for probably the next couple of months. And if the phasing that the president and the task force here in America works, hopefully we all hit phase 3. And that's sooner rather than later, where we can certainly go about our life as normal as was before. I don't buy into what lots of these other leaders are trying to do, where they're spreading fear and talking about there's never going to be a normality. We're never going to go back to the way it was. And this is something we're going to have to live with. And blah. I don't think that's the way to lead. People need hope. I am one of those people who's always hopeful. I'm always positive. That's the way I like to bounce out of bed every day. That's the way I live my life. I'm not going to change. This virus is not going to change my positive mindset. I can't let it. For those of you out there who are getting your mindset changed by it, snap out of it. All right, we're going to beat this. So let me get back to what happened to me this week. Identity theft. For those of you listening in the UK and outside of America, over here in the States, we have a thing called a social security number. You pretty much need it for everything, for opening bank accounts, for credit cards. It identifies you. It's one of the biggest numbers that you obviously securely keep. You get asked for the last 4 digits whenever the bank rings you, or whenever a credit card company rings you, or whatever it might be. You need your social security number. I have a thing called Experian, which is your credit report here in America. And you get updates every month, which tells you what loans you have, what bank accounts you have, your credit's gone up, whether it's gone down. I have decent enough credit. I'm always leveraged like everyone else. I've got credit cards, I've got mortgages, I've got loans. I got an alert this week to say I'd opened a bank account with Bank of America. I've never banked with Bank of America my whole life. I've been in the States for 10 years. I'm not a Bank of America client. So it was a red flag. I went on, and lo and behold, there were 5 notifications. One was for opening a bank with Bank of America, and apparently I'd applied for a Target credit card, a Shell Garage credit card, Alaska Airlines credit card, 4 credit cards in total. So I'm freaking out. So I got on the system, I'm making phone calls. No word of a lie. It took me 16 hours. I had my phone on hold, 2 of my daughter's mobile phones in my office on hold. You know, my computer was making phone calls, I was on hold. Because of everyone now applying for the stimulus and credit relief and loans available out there, all banks, all hotlines, they're inundated with phone calls. I finally get through to somebody at Bank of America, a lovely young lady. I have a chat. We go through the process. She starts telling me about the 2 bank accounts open in my name. So I asked her for the key details. What was the address on them? What's the email address for the contact person, the phone number? So I got all the info. So I got 2 phone numbers. I got an email address that was set up, Dara, something at yahoo.com, but Dara spelled with 1 R instead of 2. So I knew this was the perpetrator who'd stolen my identity. I shut down all the accounts, shut down all the credit cards. Obviously, I had to file a police report. I had to let my bank know, hence why I had to go sign documents yesterday. But the reality was that I'm not letting this lie. So I did a bit of private investigation work myself. I tracked down the 2 mobile numbers using the thing on Google. I found an address in Tampa. I actually emailed the person who's pretending to be me. I put on my email, the game's fucking up. I know your address. I know where you live. I was a bit like Liam Neeson from Taken. I will find you, right? And I will hurt you. And I warned this person. I said, look, I know where you are. I'm sending a team. This team's going to basically stop you doing what you're doing. And I'm the wrong person you robbed the identity of. I want the source of where you stole my identity and all my details. Because that was really important to me. Where did they get the info? Lo and behold, within a few hours, I get a response. somebody pretending it was their young dumb brother who'd stolen the ID. Cut a long story short anyway, it worked. The person shit themselves that I emailed and obviously said I was sending a team in. They sent me a dark web picture of where all my information was for sale on a website. So obviously there'd been some sort of a hack, whether it been at my local doctors, my local bank, or wherever it might be. My information was exposed, put out there, and this person paid like $50 to buy all my info and pretend to be me. So that was an interesting day in my life this week. I'm not sure if anyone else has gone through that, but if anyone out there is running around pretending to be Darren McAnthony, it's definitely not the original DMAC right here. So far, so good. I've cleaned it up. When I come back, I'm going to give my thoughts on the PFA, the wage deferral discussion, and the ongoing battle in football. Thank you. Welcome back. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's talk football. Let's talk PFA. Let's talk wage deferrals. Let's talk about other club owners and agendas and self-preservation, because it's frustrated me this week. As far as I'm concerned, and I've always been behind this, football will return. Our league season has to be finished. I've said this over and over. And yes, before people scream at me, but lives are getting lost and people are dying and there's a virus, there's a pandemic. The world is in disarray. I understand. I said in the previous segment, I live in hope. I don't live in fear. And I'm a firm believer that when the lockdown in the UK is lifted, I believe the middle of May, the 16th, we will get back to training. I believe by June, we will be playing games, whether it's behind closed doors, whether it's in a safer environment. And to be fair to, again, our president last night in America, they were discussing sports events and all those people mainly involved, the different commissioners of the different sporting events have been brought in to talk about how we get back to society in a semi-normal way, how that affects sports events. I'm not sure if that's been done with the UK government yet, but it needs to happen, those conversations. And some great ideas have been put forward over here. Eventually, when we come out of phase 1 to phase 2, phase 3 being the end where you can have full crowds. But they're even talking about at the start that you reduce capacities in crowds. You do ticketless payments. You make sure people are wearing masks and gloves. You make sure there are temperature tests when you're letting people into stadiums. There is a way forward and there is a way to control this. There is a way to stop hotspots blowing up. We don't all have to be behind the whole belief that there are no more live sports with crowds and fans. There is a way to go forward in society and life. And that's been discussed over here. I hope the UK takes the lead in lots of things, because you can say what you want about America. But if you look at it now at the testing, the mortality rate, the therapies, everything that's starting to get under control over here, America are leading the way. And hopefully other countries will follow suit as they start recovering and coming down the slope and hitting their peak. So let's talk about this week. The PFA obviously recommended their players take a 25% pay deferral for 1 month. So after weeks of discussion, knowing football's in trouble, knowing cash flows is drying up, knowing clubs are in trouble, knowing what's ahead of us, all the things we need to deal with, the PFA's recommendation was a 25% pay deferral for players on over £2,500 a month, because the ones on 2.5 and lower are exempt from this. Us basically agreeing with our players that deferral. It's not enough. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's nowhere near enough. A pay deferral is not a pay cut. A pay deferral is where you take a reduction in wages now. You get paid the full amounts back when football's back to normal. And it will be back to normal. So that really irritated me. I thought it was a poor response from the PFA. It's poor leadership. I think they needed to come together with the EFL and come to an agreement. I've been pushing for a 50% wage deferral. And I'll tell you right now, I'll give you an example. Somebody from my club yesterday, who is not a non-football playing member of staff there to do with the youth setup. They haven't been furloughed like lots of the other staff, non-playing staff have been furloughed. It's an essential person to do with our youth, is on not massive amounts of money in comparison to the football world or footballers, emailed me and offered to pay defer 50% of his wages. This is a person with a young family, kids going off to college in September, has never made serious money out of football, and has taken upon himself to offer up a deferral of his wages. Again, class. I love that. Thinking of the football club, thinking of the well-being of others at the football club, the long-term health of the football club. Players, you need to see this. You need to listen to this. You need to do the right thing. You need to stop thinking of yourselves for once. You need to stop thinking about your pay packets. All right? You need to start thinking, without your football clubs, there is no pay packets. Footballers need to wake up. They need to realise, when all is said and done, we get back and finish the season. When the new season starts, those people who are out of contract, who think they're going to get 2 and 3 year deals on $2,000 and $3,000 and $4,000 a week with football clubs, you're in for a rude awakening. Because I tell you right now, the industry is going to have to readjust. Those fancy contracts won't be on offer anymore. All right, you're going to become dinosaurs. You're going to become unemployed. You're going to become another statistic. If you don't do something now to come together and do what's right, stand by your clubs, defer wages, sensible deferment percentages, not 25%, which won't even touch the surface. Our football clubs have got no income. We've got no income probably for the next 4 or 5 months until, again, we have football with crowds. If we do resume playing in June, and if it is behind closed doors because we go down the really extreme measures of not letting any fans in, and we don't take any of the measures been followed, say, over here, if we go down that route, we've got zero income, bar from iFollow, bar from sponsors that are contracted to pay, and let's see if they pay. So you as players have a responsibility to not just the 20, 30 first-team players, but to the hundreds of members of staff. It's all right saying, oh, my club's owned by a wealthy person. It's not what it's about. This is a community effort. We keep saying we're all in this together. Let's show that we're all in this together. So if you're a football player listening to this, do the sensible thing. Know that you're a football creditor. You are always going to get paid. It doesn't matter if clubs go into administration. They come out of administration, they have to pay your wages in full that you're owed. It's always been that way in football. Footballers are a protected species when it comes to debts administration. Now, if your club goes into liquidation and out of business, you're screwed. You are fucked. You're not getting anything. Never mind 50% deferments, 25%, you're not getting paid. You need to start thinking about this. This isn't me begging. I've said it to my players. I've had responsible conversations with my captain, my groups of players, the leaders. Now is the time to come together and do the right thing. Kudos to Fleetwood, who've done it in League One. Kudos to Ipswich, Southampton, the other clubs whose players have agreed to defer wages. So far, I've got my manager, my captain, my most experienced player agreed on a deferment figure, but we want to get a collective figure. I've been ongoing in those discussions with my players for the last 72 hours. Again, I'll be resuming those talks today so we can come to a figure. Not all players are happy. The mass majority want to do something, but right now I'm not happy where we are. It needs to be more. We need to come to an agreement. So I'm hoping I can get that exercised and dealt with today. But this is something really important across the board. Now, the PFA and the EFL, get your act together. Make it happen. Not so much the EFL. This is more towards Gordon Taylor and the people in the PFA. You know it's the right thing to do. I understand you have an obligation to all your members. I understand you're trying to do right by them, but you need to think long term. You need to look at the big picture. Yes, you're hoarding over 50 million quid. Yes, you've got money stashed away for a rainy day, but that's not going to help any of your players 6 months, 12 months down the line when football is in complete financial disarray. For those people saying clubs are days away from going out of business, let me say this to you right now. If you're a football club that's days away from going out of business, you got no fucking right owning a football club. You got no right being involved in football. I understand we're all hurting. I understand we're deferring bills. We're putting off PAYE. We're putting off VAT. We're asking our players to take a deferral. We've got no income. We are worried about the short-term future, the immediate future, and the long-term future. We're putting plans in place. But any club who's trying to go out of saying they're going out of business in the next few days, they're bullshitters. They were never in a good place in the first place, and this was pre-coronavirus. So I don't like hearing that. I don't like that. Funny enough, I've had 4 managers from League One and League Two actually contact me and Zoom call with me, and it was nice to hear them say it. They reached out to me to say they're speaking to all their players, they're speaking to their owners, they're not quite clear on what to do. They respect me, having been in the game 15 years and also as a businessman, and they wanted my thoughts. So I had Zoom calls with like 4 of them, and we had a great chat about it. And they were all in agreement that something has to be done with the players. Those managers are obviously worried about the long-term health of their clubs. For the owners of football clubs out there, using this pandemic, all right, to basically push an agenda of not finishing their season, not worried about the 9 games, my message to you is simple. Screw you. I don't like what you're doing. I don't like the message. I don't like the excuses. I don't like what you're hiding behind. You're bang out of order. And I mean massively bang out of order. I've seen it out there. I've seen people say, why are we worried about these 9 games when we're worried about next season? The EFL should pay us to play these 9 games. We're going to play these 9 games with kids. Is that right? Is that a fact? Well, let me tell you right now, and this is the hard truth, and this is the hard message for you. Why don't you grow a set of balls? Why don't you come out and say it for what it is? Here's the truth about you right now if you're in that camp. You're either getting relegated, so you're happy the 9 games are done away with. You're sitting mid-table because your club basically didn't achieve fuck all, So you're not really in a promotion race. You're not in a relegation race one way or another. So you don't really care. So right now you're in self-preservation mode. You're trying to go against the grain and you're quite happy to screw off this season and not worry about the 9 games. Well, here's where the integrity kicks in for me. You've been paid as a football club, Sky money, Premier League solidarity money. You're a member of the EFL. You've already been paid to play 46 games or 45 games, and you're short. You're 9 games short. So here's my recommendation for you. If you want to carry on with that agenda and you want to keep throwing out there, we'll play with kids or we won't play the 9 games or the EFL have to pay us, give the money back. You're 9 games short. What's that? About 20, 23% or whatever else what you've been paid already? Refund the EFL, refund the Premier League, the solidarity money, give the money back or forfeit your results. If you don't like it, that's the hard truth. We have a season to finish and we're going to finish the season. In our league alone, there's 10, 11 clubs in the top of 10, 11 who still have a promotion to play for. In the bottom 7 clubs, there's at least 3, 4 clubs involved, not 5 involved in a relegation race. The integrity of our league is important. This nonsense about resuming and playing with a load of kids, I don't buy it at all. You've got players that are contracted to your football club, all right? And your job right now is to run your football club responsibly, and you have a responsibility to EFL and all the members of the EFL and the other club owners like me. It just makes me laugh. I just hate agenda merchants. I hate some of the crap that's been put out there. And it just, you can hear it in my voice right now. And people I respect usually. And I just don't like what they're saying. I don't like the route they're going down. And they're hiding behind this pandemic to send out that message. And that just breaks my heart to see it at this moment. We should be all in this together agreeing that we need to finish the season. We have 9 games to play. And we're going to get there and we're going to finish. I've seen a thing from the Premier League today. They're saying the same. They need to finish their season. They're going to get it done one way or another. So stop with all the nonsense. Stop spouting crap on social media about playing kids, about not worried about the 9 games. You have, what makes it even worse for me is a couple of these people in particular who are doing it. They've furloughed their players. I haven't furloughed my players. I haven't got the government paying my players' wages. But because some of these clubs are cheap anyway, and they pay their players 600-700 quid a week, or have an average wage of 800-900 quid. Fair play if that's how you run your club and you're doing things financially and sensibly. But because they're in that bracket, they can go and get, 2,800 quid a month paid of the wages for the players because they're in a low bracket. So these people are already getting the government to pay their players' wages. And now they're lecturing me about finishing the season and not bothering and wanting to finish the season. And the EFL have to pay them to finish the season. If the government's already paying for your players to sit at home at the moment and basically do nothing because you're not allowed to tell them to train, if you're in that position where everything's been paid for by the government, who are you to tell us that you're going to play kids when it comes back? Do the right thing. Stop talking nonsense. This league needs to finish. This season needs to finish. For the EFL, my message is simple. I sent a letter after my episode 4 last week where I laid out my ideas on a relief package, football relief package, where we needed to raise about £170 million to get through this. And I laid out the different steps in episode 4 last week on how this can be done and how football can be better for it afterwards. I sent all of that to EFL. I sent my recommendations. I'm an owner. I'm one of 72 owners in the Football League. I felt it right that I had to give them my opinion. I haven't heard back from them. I haven't had a response. For those of you who haven't listened to episode 4, I spoke about the need for all clubs in EFL needing some sort of relief package that would kick in come the summertime, that will go into next season, that will help us pay back all the bills that we're putting off for now. It would stop clubs going out of business. The money would be controlled and paid on behalf of us by the EFL, so no owner will get their hands on any of that money personally. It was done in the right way. Some of the things for the future I spoke about was wage capping based on turnover, making sure we paid the money back over 4 seasons, making sure we lived within our means, making sure we had smaller squads, so basically there wasn't stockpiling the players and mass wage bills for small clubs, making sure younger players were introduced into squads from the youth system. I spoke about bringing in a new system to do with the loan player system, where there was a maximum of what you pay in League 2 and League 1 wages-wise, so we don't have Premier League or Championship clubs taking advantage of us and the wages we have to pay. There were many, many points I made. I put it out there. I sent it to all the other owners in the EFL for transparency reasons. I want to feel like I was going behind their backs because we're all owners in this together. So I've had a few owners reach out to me. They agree with me. They agree that we need to finish the season. They agree with the financial ideas I put across. I hope to hear back from Rick Parry in the EFL. And I hope some of the ideas are workable and usable. So like I've said before, it's really important to protect the integrity of our game. It's really important to make sure no clubs go out of business at this time. Coronavirus can't finish all football clubs. And it's really important to come together and make sure that post-coronavirus, we run football sensibly. We finally put those measures in place to stop us overspending. It's gone on for too long in football. Shout out to Andy Piley at Fleetwood Town. He's doing his little YouTube videos. Fair play to him. He has his own ideas. He gave me credit for obviously my podcast and some of the things he's listened to. He's a good guy. He runs his club. He gets hammered occasionally because Fleetwood pay decent wages and he's financed it himself, but they've always paid their bills. I've got no problem with an owner putting the money up and paying their bills. Fleetwood's never been in trouble financially. They've never been in a position where they've been in the headlines like a Barry. So, there's no point in throwing stones at Andy or Fleetwood or any clubs like that because he runs a good ship. His training ground that he built is incredible. The extra income they get from that is I looked at that actually as something for us to look into for the future. And I wish him well. I wish everyone at Fleetwood well. And congratulations to their players in agreeing a wage deferment. Anyone out there, check his videos on YouTube. He's a sensible owner. And he'll be one of those owners like myself and my partners and others who will probably tighten their belts when we come out of this coronavirus pandemic and probably rein it in a bit because that's the way football's going and that's the way it's got to be. Coming up after the break, you're going to hear an interview I did with my manager. He's going to talk about what he's been up to. And he's going to talk about his thoughts on things like wage deferrals and other things in football. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome, Gaffer, to the Hard Truth Football Club Chairman by Darragh McAnthony podcast. So nice to chat with you. How you doing?
I'm very well. Yourself?
You're laughing there because I said let's keep it clean, no cursing. But I did. There's an explicit warning on the podcast so people know if there's a bit of cursing. So if I said, "What the fuck's going on with the football world, Darren?" Your response. Are you climbing the walls?
Keeping it clean.
You climbing the walls? Are you okay?
I'm all right. Same as everyone else. Some good days, some bad days.
Exactly.
Keep busy. Yeah. The wet. To be fair, I've seen it. Yeah, the weather's been good, so that has helped manage outside and all the rest of it. But no. Yeah, so, we're coping.
Let's talk from a football manager's perspective. Obviously, the football world's collapsing. Obviously society's in trouble. People are dying. I get a lot of criticism at times for talking about football. When people are dying, but we obviously have a business and industry that we need to protect and make sure we can get back to. Everyone knows I'm very much in favour of getting back to work when we can, as safely as we can. I know it's not going to be a perfect science. I've said this myself. There's going to be a risk element. I think people have to see that. They're talking about global economic depressions if we don't finally get out of our houses and back to work. So they're saying football-based on May the 16th, you're planning to get back to work. How do you feel about it? Are you in that camp of you want to lock yourself up for the next 2 years? Or are you in that camp that there's going to be an element of risk and we've got to try and get on with things as best we can?
Well, there may be an element of risk to a degree, but I don't think there's going to be too much of an element of risk because surely the government wouldn't allow that. So if they're setting the May the 16th, that's obviously where the Football League have got it from. That's what we're working towards. And that's all we can do. As a manager, that's all I can do. I've prepped my players for that. We're working away and sort of working on opposition analysis and things like that. So how do I feel about it? If the government feel that that's the scientists and obviously they trust the scientists to go back to work on May the 16th, then great. We go back to work and hopefully the season starts maybe 3 weeks after that. Sure. One thing's for sure, we are going to go back to work. It's not as if we're going to now stay off work for 3 years because the whole world will economically crash. So, and that's and I've heard some of your comments on that. That's not us overlooking the health of everyone. Of course, that's paramount. It's just facts. It's just a fact that we have to get back.
I've said that a lot. We've got over 300 employees at a football club, and each of those employees have got mortgages and bills to pay. And I understand the mortality and what's going on, and the death is horrific. But hopefully, we're hitting the apex and coming down the cliff, so to speak, on that. But it is horrible. The pandemic's horrible. But I also have to ensure that we have a football club to come back to, and that you and all the other employees, basically, your livelihoods aren't gone, because there would be a lot of issues with that too. To add on top of a pandemic, if we didn't have work and business to go back to. So yeah, I'm in that camp that there is a risk. But I also, because I've seen some other club owners give it the big one that, well, I'm not, playing meaningless games and finishing the 9 games and putting my players at risk. And what I want to scream to them is, well, with all due respect, how many footballers between the ages 17, 18 and 35 have died from coronavirus? So, and I don't mean that disrespectful to the virus itself. We know people with underlying health issues in certain age groups are at risk, but our athletes, footballers and whatever else, I don't see it myself. So I get their argument. I think it's a bit of self-preservation on their side. I think there's an agenda that they just don't want to finish the season. And for them, it's an easy thing to go on to the next season. You're in that camp. You want to finish the season, correct?
Absolutely. And I know people might think, well, that's because we are where we are in the league, but I think the integrity of the league's the most important thing. I have spoken to one or two managers myself, and they've been of that attitude. No, we just want the season over. We've got players that contract. We just want it done. Whereas I'm totally, regardless of where we were, the season has to be finished.
Absolutely.
So once you've done 36 games and you've got 9 to go, to finish a season now would be completely wrong. And if it carries on, I don't think there should be a break, or certainly nowhere near the break that you normally have. So once you complete this season, then I would say 2 weeks later you start the next season. I don't think there should be the break. We've had the break. We've had a huge break. So
you've had all your holiday time. You're not getting any more.
But you don't want any more, because that's how I'm looking at it now. You're looking at like close season. And the other thing is, we're not making the decisions here.
Correct.
We've been told what to do. We've abided by what we're doing. We're not saying on May the 16th, the government say it's another lockdown, we're going to start getting players training. Of course not.
Yeah. What
we're saying is we have to prepare for going back to work, and that's what you and I and the players are doing. And look, we want this season done. And if that means we finish the season and we look back and think, do you know what, we missed out on promotion, at least the season's finished. We move on to the next one.
We did it properly. I was talking to my missus, obviously, over a drink, saying, there's a few of the owners, a few of the managers want to be, use this, well, we don't want to finish the season. I said, she said, well, how would you feel if you're in a relegation position, or if you're in a position where you've nothing to play for? I said, me, I've always been really ethical when it comes to the rules of the game. And I would want Peterborough United to finish the season. I'd want to do right by our football league, right by fans, and right by clubs as well, the other clubs. And I think it's unfair. There's at least 10 clubs involved in a promotion race. There's at least 4 clubs involved in a relegation race. That's 70% of our league are still involved with something to play for. So, the integrity of the competition is really important. And I said in my podcast last week's episode, for those people who don't want to finish the 9 games, the owners, the managers, you know what? Here's your option: forfeit. You don't want to step up and play your 9 games, forfeit the results. So, who do we play next? Bolton. I think Bolton will want to play. I know Keith Hill, he'd want to get out and play football. But let's say they didn't want to play. Forfeit the results. Peterborough United take a 3-0 win. Happy days, move on. So, there is another option for people out there if they're really digging their heels in over that. But you can't have it both ways. At the end of the day, people have to go back to work. And we're all employees. We're all in an industry where we're employed to go to work. If the EFL say it's safe to go back and play and train, we've got to show up. That's just the end of it. That's the way it is, right?
I think it is. And I don't think because we've only got 9 games to go. I know the Football League have put out 56 days to complete a season, including the playoffs. Yeah. I think it could be done in 28 days.
Quicker.
If you play 3 games a week, there's your 9 games gone over 3 weeks. And then you just complete the playoffs over a semi-final and final in 1 week. So there's your 4 weeks.
I'm with you.
I was surprised about the 56 days. I've got to be honest, I thought it was quite long. So there's definitely ways, and also the following season, you could condense that into 8 months. There's ways of doing it. I don't think it's that difficult. I've got to be honest, to complete the season and finish and start the next one. I don't think that it's that difficult at all.
Absolutely, and we're going to have to play without crowds for those games. But like I've said to the football fans, at least they're going to get some football on TV to watch, and it's better than nothing. I was joking the other day. I was watching axe throwing on ESPN. Axe throwing. That's the only. so given the option of seeing Posh or Liverpool playing on my TV for a couple of hours every 3 days, I'd write a check right now. So empty crowds or not.
That's the other thing. The big one has been Liverpool. If they stop the season now, should they get the title? Yeah. Of course they should get the title. The title's done. Mathematically it's not, but it is. Everyone. But then even, I would imagine Liverpool would be like, well, it's a little bit default to it. We don't want to win the league that way.
Yeah.
Even the teams at the top want to complete the season, want to win the right way. And I think we'd do the same. So there's no option for me. It has to be completed. They have to find a way. And even if it goes into August, September, don't think that's an issue. I don't think the timing of it's an issue. I think the integrity is the main and most important thing.
Of course. Now, the finances side to it is obviously we're very worried, and I've been, banging the drum about the EFL and needing a relief package. I put out a whole structured plan on my last podcast. I wrote to the EFL about changes that need to come into the game. Changes based on raising 170 million to help the Football League get through. Because what's going to happen for us is the next couple of months, if sponsors don't pay us, if season ticket holders don't pay, our revenue is pretty much zero. We're already factoring money for the next amount. So we're bringing money forward. So let's say we're back July, August, or we play in June, and then the next season starts in August, September. We're going to have a shitload of bills that have carried over, that have piled up. We're going to have VAT, PAYE. If the players agree to defer wages, we're going to have all of that. So we're going to be hit with like probably 1.5, 2 million quid's worth of bills straight away. And I've obviously advocated for loaning money, pay it back with interest over 3 or 4 years, whereby I'd have to say to you, Darren Ferguson, and your staff, look, next year's budget has to be cut by 25% because we have to pay back the money that we borrowed from before. You as a manager understand that. You're on board with any cuts that are necessary to the football budget to get us through periods like this, and leaning on the younger players if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, totally, because the most important thing is a football club, and any manager that says different, I'd be amazed.
Yeah,
we have to have a football club first and foremost, and that's the most important thing. Now, just because we're a football club doesn't mean we're any different to any other business in the world. The business is gone, completely gone already. A lot of small businesses will never come back. So I think it's important that there's different ways of how we need help. The Football League or the Premier League need to help the Football League. We need help. There's lots of money in football in this country. I do think that the players have to have a realistic view about taking some sort of deferrals. That has to happen, because getting back, the season will start, but there'll be no revenue because there's no crowds. Now, if they won the season, the next season started quickly, there'll still be no revenue.
Correct.
So I've already, as people are aware, I've already spoken to all the squad, and there's an acceptance there that they will have to take a deferral. Now, a deferral is better than a cut. So
yes, correct.
I think everyone's realistic.
You offered straight away. You volunteered 50% pay deferral on your own wages, and you've got a family, and you've got a mortgage, and you've got bills. Yes, you've got the Ferguson Family Trust Fund, but I'm only wondering, you've
waiting for that.
Maybe we can borrow off the Ferguson Family Trust Fund for the club.
The grandkids, that's gone. There's enough of them.
So you took the deferral, you volunteered it. I didn't ask it, you just brought it up, and you believe the 25% from the PFA is nowhere near enough, and you're behind, basically the players and management team, everyone having to do the right thing for the football club, correct?
Absolutely. And that's why I spoke to, we spoke, then I spoke to the players. The PFA have come out and given their bit of advice. Personally, I don't think they should put numbers on things, because then, you've got to look at the bigger, one big responsibility that football has here. And I've always thought this since it started. If they're willing to allow football clubs to go out of business because of this virus, then we've got a big problem.
Massive.
This is not anyone's. This is a pandemic that's no one's fault, that every country's had to deal with.
China.
We've got to protect the football clubs.
Yeah.
We've got, and if we're starting to let football clubs go out of business, then that's not fair. That's not right.
They speak about the football family all the time, so I guess we're going to find out how much of a family we are. So, the reality is, I said this to you before, you really find out in times like this who your friends are. And, and we're meant to be all in this together. And there's a collective pain that's coming. And, it's whether or not we collectively come up with the medicine to help all of that. And that's really, really important for football. So I'm being aggressive with my thoughts on it, and I'm doing podcasts. I'm obviously speaking on various outlets. I'm on TalkSport again today, because I feel we need to keep drumming at home. And, because otherwise people will let clubs go by the wayside, and that just can't happen. And I'm massive, and even going all the way down to non-league. No football club should go out of business because of the coronavirus. No chance.
I totally agree. I mean, you seen what happened with Bury, and that was their own fault. Don't get me wrong. It's a different situation altogether. But the effect that had in football, actually, in this day and age of football club going out of business, if we were allowed the virus to start wiping clubs out because they didn't get any help, and I'm not saying they haven't got any help, but that comes from different bodies, different organisations, but also people within the football club have got to just have a realisation that, we have to take deferrals whenever we may have to.
100%. And obviously, we haven't furloughed our players, which means you still have control, per se, over them and their training schedules and everything else with our sports scientist, who isn't furloughed either. So what are they doing between now to the 16th? How have you got them set up? Because me and you were always about prepare to succeed as opposed to prepare to fail. So we want to get back. We want to win the 9 games. We want to win promotion. That's the fairy tale. So what's the preparation so far on that?
So when the date came out of the 16th of May, we had a Zoom meeting between myself and my staff. At that point, we felt that the best decision to make was to put them into a close season programme, which meant from yesterday they would have 2 weeks of doing very limited exercises. And I think the last month's been difficult because it's all been through WhatsApp and all the rest of it. So for the players mentally to continue working that way was difficult. So they have not a complete shutdown, but a lot less limited work to do. At the end of that 2 weeks, they'll then have a 3-week programme that will be obviously building them up. And then we look at if we do work to within the dates the Football League have set and the government have set, on the 16th of May, we will then have a 3-week pre-season. So first 2 weeks pre-season, and we're sort of thinking, well, if they're going to get us back on the 16th of May, they'll probably give us 3 weeks till the season starts. Yeah. And that would be exactly like first 3 weeks of pre-season, as if the season had finished, if you know what I mean.
Very good.
So we've set that up, and we made that decision very, very early. In terms of the day after it arrived, the announcement, we said, right, okay, this is how we're going to work. And this time, the last couple of times, we probably thought, well, there's no way it's going to be the 30th of April. Whereas this time, it's been made clear to the players and the staff that, look, this may be a realistic date, so we have to get our minds, because it's not just organising physically, because mentally we have to prepare the players. We're already ringing around the possibility of getting friendlies. Correct. Because we know we've got to get the players used to playing behind closed doors. There's going to be no fans, so mentally that's going to be a challenge. So we're doing as much as we can, but that's our plan as a club. As you know, that's what we've said.
We've got to get back. We've got to play a couple of good games in League One. Obviously, we've spoke to Steve Evans about playing Gillingham because we've played them already. So a good League One team that's in good form, that would really get us fine-tuned and ready to rock and roll. We need another game. How are you going to adjust playing in June without Ivan Toney?
My internet's just gone.
I'm only winding you up. Do you know what? If people could see your face right now, good news. Football's back. Bad news. Ivan's been sold to Real Madrid.
You've told me many times about these strikers you've sold, but never on a Zoom call, and you wouldn't do it that way.
Are you trying to sell a few strikers out from under you over the years?
No. You've already told me. You always told me the right way, so I knew that was bollocks.
Listen, you have to have humour, and but look, I'm going to let you get back to the family, and just want to say thank you very much for the chat, and keep rocking on, and obviously we'll catch up in a couple of days.
All right, good to speak. Take care. Cheers.
So I hope you enjoyed the interview with Darren Ferguson. I know the audio wasn't as great as we were doing a Zoom call, but I thought it was important to speak to a manager. I will speak to other people in football in the next couple of episodes. I'll get maybe Bazza Fry on as well to talk football and his thoughts on things. Quick correction in my last segment where I talked about some of the clubs who've deferred and come to agreements with their players. I said Ipswich. I actually meant Wigan, so I apologise for getting that wrong. So I'm going to wrap up quite shortly. Some couple of things. What am I doing with my family? Watching movies. Same routine every day. Making sure the kids do their schoolwork. We were on a lot of high school Zoom calls yesterday. My son's going into high school in September, so talking about that and college and the next stage in his life. We watched Trolls last weekend, the Trolls sequel. Myself and my missus are saying to each other while we're watching it, with all the lights and the weirdness of it, we were saying whoever wrote this obviously was smoking a spliff while they were doing it, because it was the most bizarre sequel to a cartoon we've ever watched in our life. I'm watching with my girls tonight a horror movie. They're real horror movie buffs, so So we're picking one out to watch tonight. They're big fans of Halloween and Friday the 13th, so we'll see. Quick funny story in football. Everyone's always saying share some stories from football. I covered this one in my book, Hobby to Obsession. I did release a book a few years ago. Top 10 bestseller on Amazon. Sold over 30,000 copies, believe it or not. But in the book, I talked about Lee Tomlin. Everyone knows Tomo is one of my favourite ex-Posh players. We had him back recently. Love the kid. Loved him as a player. But at one point in Tomo's career with Peterborough United, he destroyed my manager's office. And to make it quick and go back over it, it was a few years ago. It was coming up to transfer deadline day. We'd started the season. We'd won 4 or 5 games in a row. We were playing Crawley Town. It was a Saturday. The deadline was closing on Monday, I believe. It was Sunday or Monday, I want to say. And I always remember Lee coming into my office before the game and saying, Celtic are about to call you with an offer to buy me. So I got Baz in the office and said, have Celtic been on to you? Baz says, yeah, I've had the chief executive on offering me $1.5 million for Lee Tomlin. I said, right, what did you say? And, obviously he said, well, I told him to stop taking the piss, come back with a better offer. Now, I believe the Scottish deadline day was that day, the day we were playing the game. So everything was in motion. His agent had been tipped off. Lee had been tipped off. Lee wanted to go and play for Celtic. Champions League. He was going to be playing Barcelona on a Wednesday night. You can understand where he was coming from. We're a League One football club. So obviously we said to Lee, look, there's no way we can do this deal with Celtic. The deadline closed, I think it was 7 o'clock that day. And he said, well, we can get it done. And I said, well, how? You got to do your medical. He goes, well, we've already organised the medical half an hour down the road. I said, is that a fact? Anyway, long story short, we told Celtic to buzz off. They got up to 2 million. We turned them down. We played the game. Lee was absolutely awful in the game. He was substituted at half time. He was sat in the stands. He had his phone on. He was obviously liaising with his agent. The manager comes up after the game and says to me, he said, Chairman, my office is like a rock star has lived in a hotel room and absolutely destroyed it. I said, what are you talking about? He said, Tomo's burst into my office, demanded the move to Celtic. I've obviously said to him, it's not going to happen today. Tomo's gone about destroying his office, losing his head, losing his crap. And obviously that there is one story of many I can tell in football. I understood where he was coming from. He did leave in the January after getting sent off about 9 times in 12 games. He lost his head. Looking back in time, I understand where Tomo was coming from. He was going to be getting paid 20, 25 grand a week. He was on 3 grand a week with Peterborough at the time. I can empathise with footballers when they're in that position. You got to do what's right for your football club. And at that time, and that, place we were in, and we were top of the league at the time, we'd lost Dwight Gale. We just felt it wasn't the right time to sell Tomo. Obviously, come January when we sold him, it was the only thing that could happen. He went to Middlesbrough. He's since gone on and played in the Premier League. He's had a great career. He's done really well. He's like a second son to me. He comes to me for help and advice. We talk all the time. He's got himself in great shape, and he's rocking and rolling again for Cardiff in the Championship. So, but that's just a little story in time. I'll do another one next week. I'll possibly talk about the Dwight Gale transfer and what went on there when we were in Ireland in pre-season and whatever else, and the metrics behind the transfer itself. For now, I'm going to sign off. It's probably the longest podcast I've done. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Any ideas, suggestions, guests you'd like me to interview, realdarrenmcanthony@gmail.com is the email address. Please pass on the podcast to anyone that you feel would enjoy listening to it. To everyone out there, stay safe. For those who work in healthcare, who are battling on the front lines, full admiration and respect from me. The job you do is incredible. God bless you all. Take care. Thank you for now.